So the big question is this. Why well-being conscious women just like us who want to live healthy and happy life are constantly feeling vulnerable, like, what if I get attacked? And so many people who teach self-defense are tough men or martial artists who don't seem to understand what women really go through every day. How can we feel safer and be more confident in our personal safety? That is the question, and this channel gives you the answer. My name is Kinko Hamilton, and welcome to Rise Up Against Violence. Hey, today I'm so excited to have Anila Lee-Yuen. She is the president and CEO of the Center for Newcomers that assists 15,000 immigrants and refugees and their Canadian children every year. They offer women's self-defense as well. So let's dive right in to find out how women's self-defense is helping immigrants and refugees to have a better life. So Anila, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kinko. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to have Anila. You know why, ladies? Because when I hosted the Women's Self-Defense Summit in 2020, I had so much technical problems, like so many of them. And Anila was just so patient and
So
so
fine.
kind to me. So I knew at the point, this woman is a gem. So excited to have you, Anila.
Thank you. Thank you. So you had asked about how the immigrants and refugees are doing with the
Yeah, I would
self-defense.
love to know. Yes, I would love to know because that's not something that we usually deal with in our daily lives. So what's the situation like regarding refugees and immigrants?
Well, I think one of the things that we always like to talk about as an NGO that works with and advocates for immigrants and refugees is that so many of the issues that in the broader community, whether that's in the United States or Canada or England, some of the Western countries, those larger, broader issues that could be considered stigmatizing. So that can include like LGBT plus issues or mental health and definitely family violence, right? Or domestic violence are often things that because we haven't come to terms with them really well in terms of Canada or US, in terms of how we talk about them, and there's still so much stigma around that within homes and within communities, that for newcomer communities, they feel even much more disempowered or disenfranchised. And so the opportunity for self-defense and offering free classes of self-defense through an organization that offers counseling for women and whatever else ends up being a really great gateway for women to say, oh, I'd like to take that. And then while they're there, you've got social workers also there. Sometimes we have like our Calgary police services are also there. Women like police officers are with us. And so it creates that environment of safety where they may then choose to disclose certain circumstances in their home or at work or other places where they might be harassed, and also gives them that kind of empowerment, which is what we're trying to do, right? So I don't know if you can see, I'm wearing my t-shirt. It says here, let me bring that down. It says empowering women through self-defense, right, with our Center for Newcomers logo on it. And really that's what we're trying to do, is to try and get especially women and their children to feel comfortable in terms of actually knowing where they can get assistance, not only in terms of how to defend themselves in the moment, but then how do you access the Calgary police services or the police services? How do you access counseling support? How do you get shelter? How do you get food? All of those other things that will often prevent a woman from wanting to come forward because she says, well, where are my kids going to sleep and how am I going to feed them and different things like that, right?
That makes sense, Anila. Thank you so much for sharing. You mentioned that women's self-defense is a kind of getaway for those immigrants and refugees to start opening up and feel more comfortable and kind of migrate into the new country, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what kind of trainings are you doing?
So we work with multiple different organizations and martial arts academies. We do primarily like to focus on female instructors so that we can ensure that the female clients are feeling safe, right? And then what we do is we do everything from the basics. It's usually about a 2-hour session, and we do everything from the basics in terms of knowing your environment, how do you stay safe, how do you stay calm, all of those different things, to very easy techniques that you and I would learn in our martial arts studios from, like where are the pain points, right? Like, where can you hit, what can you do to get away? But the premise really is always around how do you get away as quickly as you can and get to safety and be able to call 911 and be able to get the assistance, right? So it's really that practice of being very quick in and out as fast as you possibly can, and then also progressing to some of those more precarious situations where you might be pinned up in a corner, or you might be, mounted, or those kind of things where we might need, some of those BJJ type techniques and whatever to be able to assist us.
Mm-hmm. Anila, you mentioned that you teach them to stay calm. Could you tell us more about how to stay
Yeah.
calm? Because that's one of the things that women actually can they really, one of the things that they most concerned about. Can they actually stay calm? Can they actually stay calm enough to execute what they learn?
Yeah, and I think that that's where the practice comes into play, right? To actually, start off, because so many of the women that we work with are very vulnerable in so many different ways, right? So you want to start off very slowly, and it may be multiple different sessions where you're just, getting people comfortable with movements and getting people comfortable with just, breathing techniques and different things like that. And then by the time they've built up all of their courage, then it's putting it in action. It's either if they're comfortable having one of our male allies, actually, grab their hand, or, do something, and they have to use a technique, right? Because it gets the adrenaline going, and they need to see if they can do that. Or if they're not comfortable, then having one of us women, do the attack or whatever else. But it's really a process. And what we always like to say is to ensure that it's really about practicing in your head, paying attention to where you are all around you, and also knowing, how to get assistance. Like if you carry a cell phone, do you know how to call 911 or get the alarm going on there or whatever else? Because you don't want to be fumbling with it right in the last second, right? You should be practicing that, at home when you're calm, so that you can continue that. And I think that that's so important, right? And of course, I'm not the primary instructor. I'm a student of martial arts, but we have wonderful, great instructors that are much more, have been doing this for 20, 30 years, and really do know their, how to provide those specific techniques inside and out.
Mm-hmm. So Anila, what are the first techniques that those refugees and immigrants learn for self-defense?
It's definitely knowing your environment. That is the first technique before any getting into anything physical. It's about knowing your environment, being able to know where you are, where the exits are, even if you're outside, like how can you make an escape? Do people know where you are? All of those different kind of pieces around that. And once you get that, and then that staying calm, and all of those kind of pieces, calling out for help, all of those things, then we get into mostly, different instructors that we work with will have different ways of teaching basically the soft points, right? Like how do you get somebody that's a lot bigger than you often, right? To stop attacking you, right? Go for their eyes, go for their throat, get their knee, like those different kind of the groin, like those different kind of things. And um and then and that instinct to run, so we practice that instinct to run quite a bit, right? I have an instructor of mine that always says that, you could practice all of these techniques as much as you want, regardless of whether it's self-defense for like women, or whether it's even our martial arts training. But if you don't actually practice the running piece, if you don't know how to run, then you're not going to actually be able to, um, to progress, and be able to get out of the situation. And I think that that's a piece that's always missing, is that we'll teach people how to do that, and then we'll say, and then run. But nobody, unless you're actually, in the practice, nobody actually thinks that practicing how to jog or run or sprint is actually important, because if you haven't done that since you were a kid, you're going to have a hard time sprinting or running or moving, right? So that's such an important part of getting out of there, is, trying to build up your speed.
Yes, Anila, and that reminds me of the story that I want to share with you. So I practice Muay Thai and kickboxing, and those combinations, right? Like a one, two,
Yeah,
three,
yeah.
or whatever you parry in, anyways, with kung fu, or I do kung fu too, but anything. So you do those drill, then
Yeah.
after that, you stop because you do
Yep.
the drill 1, 2, 3, and you stop, and then go back and then 1, 2, 3, and stop, and then 1, 2, 3, right? So when you're so used to that, and when you try, have you tried sparring? Have you done
Yes.
sparring? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I have.
When you
Yep.
do spar, you do spell 1, 2, 3, and you're like, okay, I did it, and then you go, you know what I mean? Like other
That's it.
your opponent is, still coming to you.
Yep.
Oh my God, this is not what I learned.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
supposed to stay there. But so yeah, that makes total sense. You do that, you do techniques or whatever necessary, and then you have to run. That is a
Yeah,
very good point.
absolutely. Like my instructor, Guru Alvin in Pomona, Cali, out of Los Angeles, even with our Cali training and we're training with the sticks or whatever, right? Like once you're done the movements, don't put your hands down, right? Like, because it's like, no, you're not relaxed anymore. And that's such a hard thing because you're like, okay, I just did the movement and look at, I did it so perfect and I got all the coordination and then you just kind of relax. But that's not how real life is ever going to be, right? You're going to have your hands up, like whether it's like Muay Thai or whatever it is. And I think that that's so difficult, especially for people that are more like a person that is coming to self-defense class is more like a person who's maybe a student of these things, but not necessarily at that kind of high level intensity fighting or training or, teaching kind of mode. So it's easy to forget, right? That, oh, right, I'm supposed to be on. I'm supposed to keep, like, the drill isn't over once I've done the coordination or whatever the coordination drill it is. I'm still on. I still have to wait because there could be attacks coming from anywhere, right? But it's so difficult to put that into your mind, especially if you're not like, like my husband is an avid martial artist and instructor and, does all kinds of things and Hungar Kung Fu and a whole bunch of other places and stuff. So he's always on, right? But for me, it's much more difficult. I'm like, he's always like, put your hands back up. Like, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, right. So, and I sympathize with so many of our clients that we work with because they're doing the same thing. It almost becomes fun, right? They're learning to punch, they're learning to do these things, and it's super fun for them. But then we have to bring in that seriousness going, great, like we wanted you to have fun so that you'd actually do this, but run, like get out of there. Don't stay and look to see what happened.
Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know what Kali is one of the Filipino martial arts styles that uses lots of sticks and basically the stick fight. That's what Kali is. And Anila, I wanted to ask you this. You just said, you make it fun so they can learn better. Yes, we learn much better in fun environment. But in reality, self-defense is not really fun, is it? When you are in a situation, dangerous situation, when you
No.
have to defend yourself. So how do you transition that?
Yeah, and that's for our client base, that becomes more difficult, right? It's much more difficult than when we're working specifically, like when it's just something you do as mother-daughter and you might not be in any imminent danger or anything like that, and you see it at your community center or something, or a martial arts studio. Oh, you can do self-defense classes and you can do that. But so many of the clients, like I said, that we're working with are very vulnerable. They may have, family violence or domestic violence situations at home that we don't know about, which is why part of the reason that we're trying to do that. So it's this fine line between, encouraging them and wanting to create a situation where they're, having fun and enjoying what they're doing, but then also, um, you know, uh, making sure that the seriousness is there, right? And that's the reason why, like, I would always recommend anytime if anyone that's watching here, if you're doing self-defense with populations that are vulnerable, populations that may be experiencing violence or have in the past, that you should always have a counselor present, right? Like a certified social worker or clinical psychologist or therapist or somebody present. And that's what we do because we've had situations where, women might hyperventilate or, because it reminds them of an attack that they had or something like that. Or they may have like blocked it out of their memory and then it comes flooding back because of what they're seeing, right? So, unless you yourself as an instructor, for example, are a certified, social worker, psychologist, somebody who can actually deal with that part of it, it's really important when you work with very vulnerable people that may have experienced trauma previously, to not re-traumatize them, which is why that balance of fun versus seriousness has to be like, it's a balance of going back and forth. Like, you want people to laugh and enjoy themselves and feel comfortable, but at the same time, you also want them to understand that this is to be used in situations where they could be in really precarious, and awful kind of danger.
Absolutely. That's such a great point you brought up, Anila. So in our system that I teach, I I have to be certified. I mean, obviously, I have to be certified to teach all those techniques, but also I have to be certified for CPR and resuscitation and all of that. So I absolutely strongly encourage any instructors or teachers who teach self-defense to be, you know, to be able to not to be. I'm not going to say to be a healer, but to be able to have that tools with you.
Yeah,
100%.
and and that's that brings a plug to our Filipino martial arts with the Cali system, in the Inasanto system. One of our 12 areas, our last area, is actually healing arts, because it's so important to have your mind body connection. And we know that through my husband's kung fu with the chi energy and all those things. I'm a certified Reiki master, which really assists a lot in terms of that kind of chi energy and flow and grounding yourself. And I think, but and I think that that's one of the things that definitely, even in COVID times, is something that the martial arts community, that we can always definitely give back, right? Like, there's opportunities for partnering with, I would suggest that every group, if you can partner with a not-for-profit organization with a women's, maybe there's a trade you can do where you offer self-defense class and they are there to help, or there's, in Canada, you can do tax receipts, for you can offer tax receipts for the business for work that's done, as long as there's an invoice to show that this is what it would actually cost. So there's different ways of doing that, where we're beyond the making money potential, which is really important as well, but that you can also get involved in the community and being able to be a safe place where you don't know. Like, I have many friends of mine that have been in precarious situations, that have dealt with domestic violence, have dealt with partner abuse, and ended up becoming really avid and strong and wonderful martial artists out of that, because they found the empowerment through the community, right? And through all of us, in terms of coming together. And so I know a lot of women that have been able to do that. And so that would be another thing where I would encourage people to reach out to your local NGOs and women's groups and things like that, and see if there's some sort of a trade or some sort of a beneficial way. Or in Canada, you can get grants often from the government to be able to do that. So you could get paid, and through the grant or whatever, because you're offering the courses for free for the most vulnerable, right? So, but you're still getting paid, but through the government, as opposed to through through the individual. And I think that just that being able to give back, especially in the time of COVID right now, when people might be at home and can't necessarily leave their situations, to be able to have that outlet in Zoom and be able to learn those things, I would suspect that there'd be a lot of appetite from many different governments to pay for that. And if anyone wants to know how we've done it and how we continue to do it, they're welcome to send, drop me an email or whatever. I'm happy to work through that and through some of the curriculum and through some of those pieces, because I would love it if all through North America, if we had our martial arts family working with our most vulnerable women, regardless of whether they're newcomers, but like any vulnerable group of women. Wouldn't that just be amazing?
Absolutely. That sounds really amazing. And I'll definitely send you an email.
Yeah.
About that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's amazing, Anila. You mentioned that, you practice healing arts as well. And that's a part of being, what's the right way to say it? It's part of being a good citizen. You to be a fighter, you have to be a healer as well. And you mentioned you do Reiki, you're a Reiki teacher. What other healing elements do you bring into your community?
Um, so Reiki is extremely important, but that can be translated in any way. So that's the chi. That's your in my home country and culture in India. That's your, like, your dharma and your prana and like all the yoga terms that people are learning. Like, that's a part of our culture in terms of the getting the chi flowing. But meditative practices. And we talk about so often in martial arts around flow state, right? Like you get into the flow. That is a type of meditation practice, right? So if whatever it is, if you do your movements and they just become automatic, that kind of Zen state of clearing your mind of everything else is just so important to being able to heal yourself and to be clear in that. So any type of meditation, any type of flow state, and anything else that brings you joy and connection, right? Like for me, one of the things that I advocate a lot is for people that like children, go have a conversation with a child, right? They will get you laughing, they will get you, thinking about things in a different way. But some people don't like kids, right? Like maybe that's it's true, right? You don't really,
You know what, I have to say, sorry, Anila, I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to interrupt, but before I had my own son, which was 12 years ago, I really disliked children. Um, don't, yeah, just give me a label, whatever it is, but I just didn't like the kids. I mean, they're
yeah.
just like, so I just thought I just didn't like them. But then I had my first son, and then like love kids. It's so interesting.
Well, and people's priorities change in life too, right? Like I was born loving children, right? Like I still love kids, and kids are magnets to me, and I totally thoroughly enjoy it. But if that's not your thing, maybe pets are, right? Like go and pet an animal or whatever else. That could be a snake. I love snakes. It's weird. I know people think that's really weird.
You pet a snake?
Yeah, I love snakes.
Wow.
I like them all over me, and like I love
Oh,
snakes.
you're
Yeah.
one of those people who put snake over here?
Oh yeah, I love that. Every time I get an opportunity to have like to play with snakes, and like I pet them and I talk to them like they're like puppies, and people look
Wow.
at me like I'm weird because I'll be like, come here, and I'll like kiss it and stuff, and like it's weird. But
And they come to you?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, like yeah. So like whatever your thing is, right? Like I like snakes and I like frogs. Weird, I know. Like aquatic frogs. Like those are my thing. And I like puppies too, and cats and whatever else and all those things. But you know what I mean? Like find something that brings you joy. And the practice though that is so important is the clearing your mind and
Yeah.
being aware in the moment. So, the Zen masters will always say, like, or the India in the yogis will always say, like, if you were writing, focus on the pen, focus on the paper, focus on what you're saying. If you're drinking like I'm drinking coconut water, like focus on that in the moment. Clear your head of everything else. And it's difficult to do in our worlds, right? But that for me, that has been made my life easier. I've been now practicing martial arts for almost 4 years, and that's made it easier for me in terms of my martial arts practice, because the more I can bring my 20 plus or 30 years of about 20 years of healing practice and instructing and healing practices, the more I can bring that into anything I do, including the martial arts, the easier it is for me to understand those processes.
Hmm. I can totally see those people who you serve are so blessed to have you, and learning all of that. And that's not something that difficult for them to, or anybody to learn either, because we are all energy and
Yep.
uh energetic living anyways, creatures anyways.
Yep. And my university degree is actually in neuroscience. So I do like to be able to, when I'm teaching Reiki, especially, or any of the healing type of arts, I really do like to be able to incorporate, for the people that are like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Well, I can show them the scientific studies that actually say, well, no, this is actually having an impact. And the fact that everything, scientifically, we always say everything is made up of either waves or particles. So when we talk about, your Reiki, your chi energy, whatever, it's
Mhm.
just the wave. That's what it is,
Exactly.
right? Very easy.
Absolutely. I'm a Reiki teacher as well. And a big fan. I do it every day. I do it to my husband. I do it to pet. I don't have pets right now, but I do it to my kids.
Yep,
Amazing. We are
yep,
amazing, right? All we have to
it
do
is.
is bring up those amazing qualities, and we can take care of themselves. But let's face it, reality is we got so much blankets, like onion layers, right, in ourselves to
Oh,
suppress
sure.
our greatness. So With that being said, Anila, what would you suggest? What would you do for women to overcome what if I get attacked fear that we have every day, everywhere we go?
You know, there's a few things, right? And before we get into like what women can actually do, I think that there's an onus on everyone, male, female, gender diverse, for all of us to really, we spend so much time, and it's so important to talk about women's self-defense and self-defense, but we really wouldn't need this if the men weren't attacking us, right? For the most part. And so there really is a lot of work and advocacy that needs to be done on male toxicity and around what it means to be masculine and what it means to we used to have so many rites of passage in many cultures and many different ways of being, and so much of that is lost in the Western world, and that creates these issues around men not necessarily understanding fully what their role is, or just the different media, kind of things that are being brought forward that say that men are supposed to be aggressive. But as we know through our martial arts community, that's not actually true, because as you had so eloquently said, we learn this violent side, but you can't have one side of the coin without the other, which is the healing side, and which is the peace side, right? And so, that's the first piece. And then for the women, because we do live in a world where we're still dealing with those issues, is the first step is really, finding that calm and finding that ability to be aware and self-aware and bring that, healing practice into your life. And then the third piece in terms of maintaining calm is, if you're the kind of person that needs to practice, get people to help you practice. Get somebody that you trust, like often like a male or somebody larger than you, a woman that's bigger than you that can, can hold you down, kind of a thing. My niece Jasmine, yeah, she can hold me down with one pinky, right? And she's the same size as me. She's just much stronger than I am. She's also got 25 years younger than me, but you know what I mean? But so get somebody who's stronger than you, so you can practice with them. So in case the situation comes, it's just like running a marathon, right? Like for my friends that run marathons, they always tell me, you never run the full marathon to practice. You only run a half marathon. And then you're so used to it that you use all of your energy and your strength and your mental powers to kind of go through for the next half of that marathon. Similarly, I find with these kind of things, with any kind of fear, whether it's around getting attacked or anything else that you're scared of, is put yourself in the situation the best you can, to try and practice it. But then if you are in the situation, that your own willpower will get you through it. I had an instructor once, and I can't remember, it was at a seminar, and there was like 5 or 6 instructors, and one of them was talking about how research says that that the number one indicator of whether a woman is going to survive is whether she believes she's going to survive or not.
So right? True. So true.
And I think that's where that is if you think that you've lost, you've already lost. If you think that you're going to survive, you will. And that also reduces your chances, at least in an open setting, right, where it's not domestic related or whatever else, of being sought after as a victim. Because of course we know that people that look more confident and look like they're going to fight back aren't the ones, because perpetrators are lazy. They don't want to have to do all the work, right? They're going to try and go after somebody that's going to be easy. So if it looks like that you're difficult to go after, they're not going to go after you.
Great, Anila. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Anila's information is down below, and please go check it out. Once again, Anila, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kinko. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Would you like to get the advices from the world's top self-defense experts? If so, go and get your pass from www.womensselfdefensesummit.com.